The Monster Within, Weaponizing Your Repressed Shadow Self. Introduction. The Illusion of the Civilized Mind. You believe you are a good person. You believe you are kind, rational, civilized, and moral. You pride yourself on your ability to compromise, your willingness to help others, and your capacity for empathy. You follow the rules. You wait your turn in line. You swallow your anger when you are disrespected, telling yourself that maintaining the peace is the honorable, mature thing to do. This is the first and most fatal lie you have ever been told, and worse, it is a lie you have chosen to believe. You are not a good person. You are a domesticated animal. Beneath the thin, fragile, heavily conditioned veneer of your civilized identity, there is a dark, primal, and incredibly violent architecture. It is an architecture forged not in boardrooms or classrooms, but in the brutal, unforgiving crucible of evolutionary survival. Within your subconscious mind lives a predator. It is a creature of raw ambition, bottomless greed, ruthless aggression, and absolute subjugation of threats. The famous Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung called this hidden, repressed side of the human psyche the shadow. From the moment you were born, society, your parents, your teachers, your religious institutions, and the media began a systematic, coordinated campaign to force you to lock this monster in the basement of your mind. Society needs you to be predictable, compliant, and harmless. A functioning society cannot exist if every individual acts on their raw, primal urges for dominance. Therefore, society punished your aggression, shamed your greed, and condemned your selfishness. You were taught that the shadow was evil, so you buried it. You built a heavy, iron door in your mind, locked the monster inside, and threw away the key. You constructed a persona, the fake, smiling, agreeable mask you wear every day to ensure the tribe accepts you. But here is the dark, biological truth that polite society desperately wants to hide from you. The basement is not soundproof, and the monster is not dead. It is alive, it is starving, and it is secretly controlling your life. When you repress your shadow, you do not destroy it. You merely hand it the steering wheel in the dark. A repressed shadow leaks out in the most pathetic, destructive ways imaginable. It manifests as passive aggression. It manifests as self-sabotage, chronic anxiety, unexplained depression, and a crippling inability to set boundaries. It is the reason you freeze when you should fight. It is the reason you accept a mediocre salary when you know you deserve an empire. You have castrated your own potential because you are terrified of your own capability of ruthlessness. In this exhaustive 10,000-word masterclass, we are going to perform psychological surgery. We are going to walk down into the basement of your subconscious, unlock the iron door, and introduce you to the monster you have spent your entire life running from. We are not going to kill the monster. We are going to train it. We are going to harness it. We are going to weaponize it. You will learn the metabolic cost of repression and why being a nice person is physically destroying your energy. You will learn the mechanics of psychological projection and why the traits you hate most in other people are actually the exact weapons you need to succeed. You will discover the alchemy of spite, learning how to convert toxic resentment into cold, unstoppable, high-octane fuel for your ambitions. Finally, you will learn the integration protocol. You will learn to fuse your civilized persona with your primal shadow, creating a terrifyingly effective, whole and sovereign individual capable of navigating the modern world with the strategic brilliance of a scholar and the ruthless execution of an apex predator. If you want to remain comfortable, if you want to keep playing the victim, and if you are terrified of discovering what you are truly capable of, turn this audio off right now. Go back to the herd. Go back to sleep. But if you are ready to stop being harmless, if you are ready to reclaim the primal power that is rightfully yours, then listen closely. It is time to descend into the dark. It is time to meet the monster. Chapter 1: The Biology of the Shadow and the Nice Guy Penalty. To weaponize the shadow, we must first strip away the mysticism and look at the cold, hard biology of human nature. The shadow is not a ghost. It is not a demonic spirit. It is a highly localized, distinct neurological and endocrine profile that you are actively suppressing. The evolution of the predator. Look at the history of human evolution. The men and women who survived the brutal conditions of the ancient world were not the nicest, most accommodating people in the tribe. The survivors were the ones who possessed the capacity for extreme, calculated violence when their territory was threatened. They were the ones who possessed the greed to hoard resources for the winter and the dominant, manipulative social intelligence to rise to the top of the tribal hierarchy. You are the direct genetic descendant of apex predators. The neurological circuits for aggression, territorial dominance, and ruthless self-interest are hardwired into the deepest structures of your brain, specifically the amygdala, the hypothalamus, and the basal ganglia. When society domesticates you, it does not magically erase these million-year-old neural pathways. It simply forces your prefrontal cortex, the logical, inhibitory center of your brain, to constantly, actively suppress them. The metabolic cost of repression. Here is the most critical biological fact you must understand. Repression requires massive amounts of metabolic energy. Imagine holding a beach ball underwater. The ball naturally wants to float to the surface. To keep it submerged, you must constantly exert downward physical force. Your arms get tired and you relax your muscles. The ball violently erupts out of the water. Your shadow is the beach ball. Every single time a colleague disrespects you in a meeting, your primal brain instantly generates an aggressive response. Your amygdala fires, your body prepares to defend its territory, but your civilized persona panics. It calculates the social risk, decides it is too dangerous to cause a scene, and forces you to swallow the anger. You force a fake smile, you nod, you hold the beach ball underwater. Doing this takes a catastrophic toll on your biological battery. It drains your working memory. It spikes your baseline cortisol levels. This is exactly why you feel so profoundly, inexplicably exhausted at the end of a typical workday, even if you just sat at a desk staring at a screen. You are not exhausted from the work, you are exhausted from the monumental, invisible effort of pretending to be harmless. You are bleeding metabolic energy trying to keep the monster locked in the basement. The nice guy penalty. The ultimate manifestation of a completely repressed shadow is the nice guy or the people pleaser. Society tells us that being nice is a virtue. In the realm of dark psychology and power dynamics, nice is not a virtue, it is a tactical vulnerability. When you are fundamentally harmless, when you are incapable of saying no, incapable of demanding respect, and incapable of asserting your own selfish desires, you signal to the world that you are a subordinate. You become a prey animal. Narcissists, sociopaths, and highly dominant individuals have an acute, almost supernatural radar for repressed individuals. They can smell the nice guy from across the room. They know that because you are terrified of conflict, because conflict might accidentally let your shadow out, you will accept poor treatment. You will do their extra work. You will let them take the credit. The nice guy believes that if he is just accommodating enough, the world will eventually reward him. He operates on a covert contract with reality. If I am good and suppress my dark urges, the universe owes me success and love. The universe owes you absolutely nothing. The universe respects leverage, boundaries, and capability. A person who is purely nice is not respected. They are utilized. They are stepping stones for those who have integrated their shadows. To break free from the nice guy penalty, you must realize that true morality is not the inability to do harm. A rabbit is not moral because it doesn't kill a wolf. It is simply incapable. True morality, true charismatic power, belongs to the lion who has the absolute capacity to tear you to pieces, but consciously chooses to keep his claws sheathed until it is necessary. You cannot be truly good until you are truly dangerous, and you cannot be dangerous until you unlock the shadow. Chapter 2: The Mechanism of Projection. Your hate is your map. If the shadow is locked in the basement, hidden from your conscious awareness, how do you find it? How do you know what your specific monster looks like? The subconscious mind is a master of camouflage. You cannot simply sit in a quiet room, close your eyes, and ask your shadow to reveal itself. Your ego will block the transmission. Your ego is terrified of the shadow because acknowledging the monster means acknowledging that your good person identity is a fraud. To bypass the ego, we must use a psychological backdoor. We must analyze the phenomenon of psychological projection. Projection is a defense mechanism first identified by Sigmund Freud and heavily expanded upon by Jung. It is the process by which the human ego takes the dark, unacceptable, repressed traits within itself and unconsciously projects them outward, perceiving them in other people. We do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. The mirror of revulsion. When you encounter a trait in someone else that triggers a massive, disproportionate, visceral feeling of hatred, disgust, or intense irritation within you, you are not actually reacting to them. You are looking in a mirror. You are reacting to a disowned piece of your own soul. Let us look at a brutal, clinical example. Imagine you are in an office and you have a colleague named Richard. Richard is aggressively ambitious. He constantly self-promotes. He takes credit for team projects, he shamelessly flatters the CEO, and he is ruthlessly climbing the corporate ladder. You absolutely despise Richard. You talk behind his back. You tell your other colleagues, he is so arrogant, he's a narcissist. I could never be that selfish. I believe in teamwork and humility. You feel morally superior to Richard, but your hatred is a lie. You do not hate Richard because he is arrogant. You hate Richard because he's giving himself permission to do exactly what your shadow is screaming at you to do. Deep in your subconscious, you possess a massive, terrifying appetite for power, recognition, and dominance. But because your parents or society shamed you for being bossy or selfish when you were a child, you locked that ambition in the basement. You adopted the persona of the humble team player. When you see Richard acting on his ambition, it threatens your entire psychological framework. It proves that ambition gets rewarded, which means your choice to be humble is actually just cowardice. Your ego protects you from this devastating realization by converting your subconscious envy into conscious hatred. Practice Application 1: The Hate Audit. This is your first actionable protocol in weaponizing your shadow. You must map the perimeter of the basement. You will do this by conducting a clinical hate audit. Take a blank piece of paper. This is for your eyes only, so absolute, brutal honesty is mandatory. Write down the names of 3 people you actively dislike, deeply resent, or find incredibly irritating. It could be a coworker, a celebrity, a politician, or a family member. Next to each name, write down the exact trait that disgusts you. She is too loud and demands attention. He is ruthlessly greedy and only cares about money. She is manipulative and uses her sexuality to get what she wants. Now you must execute the psychological pivot. You must cross out their name and write your own. You must confront the terrifying reality that these traits live inside of you. If they did not live inside of you, you would not have the radar to detect them so acutely in others. A person who has fully integrated their ambition does not hate a greedy person. They simply observe them objectively and outmaneuver them. Hatred is a symptom of repression. The woman who is too loud represents your repressed desire to stop silencing yourself and command the room. The man who is greedy represents your repressed desire to stop settling for a mediocre salary and hoard resources. The woman who uses her sexuality represents your repressed desire to stop being a passive, nice guy, girl, and weaponize your own magnetism. Your hate is your treasure map. Follow your disgust, and you will find the exact weapons you need to conquer your current reality. Chapter 3: Meeting the Monster, the Architecture of Your Dark Triad. Once you have completed the hate audit, you will begin to see the outline of your shadow. You will realize that the basement is not filled with random chaos. It is occupied by a highly specific, personalized psychological entity. For the average person, the shadow is a disorganized, feral beast that thrashes around blindly. But we are not here to be average. We are here to become architects of our own psychology. To weaponize the shadow, you must classify it. You must understand its exact nature. In dark psychology, we look at the extremes of human behavior through a framework known as the dark triad: Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. While clinical, full-blown dark triad personalities are deeply destructive and chaotic, the traits of the dark triad, when microdosed and strictly managed by a highly disciplined prefrontal cortex, are the exact tools utilized by every legendary CEO, elite commander, and world-class strategist in human history. Let us identify which aspect of the dark triad your shadow leans toward, so you can learn how to unchain it strategically. 1. The repressed Machiavellian, the strategist shadow. If your hate audit revealed that you despise people who are manipulative, calculating, or sneaky, your shadow is a Machiavellian. Your conscious persona is likely overly honest, overly transparent, and highly vulnerable. You believe that the truth will set you free, and you constantly overshare your intentions, allowing your competitors to easily anticipate your moves and defeat you. You are a pawn playing checkers. Your shadow, however, is a grand master playing three-dimensional chess. The repressed Machiavellian shadow understands that human interaction is a marketplace of leverage. It understands that total transparency is a weakness. It sees the hidden agendas of others clearly, but your nice ego refuses to act on that information. The weaponization. You must invite the Machiavellian out of the basement during high-stakes negotiations or office politics. You stop blurting out everything you know. You learn to speak in calibrated silences. You begin to treat relationships not just as emotional bonds, but as strategic alliances. When a toxic boss tries to set you up for failure, your nice guy persona wants to work harder to prove them wrong. Your unchained Machiavellian shadow smiles, documents their incompetence, subtly leaks that documentation to their superiors, and orchestrates their downfall without leaving a single fingerprint. You use the dark art of calculated deception not to harm the innocent, but to absolutely annihilate the predators who try to feed on you. 2. The repressed narcissist, the sovereign shadow. If your hate audit revealed that you despise people who are arrogant, vain, attention-seeking, or egotistical, your shadow is a narcissist. Your conscious persona is likely self-deprecating. You suffer from imposter syndrome. You constantly downplay your achievements. You shrink in social settings, letting louder, less competent people steal the spotlight because you are terrified of looking arrogant. You suffer from the delusion of false humility. Your shadow, however, possesses an unshakable, terrifying, godlike belief in its own supremacy. The repressed, narcissistic shadow craves the spotlight. It knows, objectively, that you are smarter, faster, and more capable than the people currently leading you. It wants to stand on the table and demand absolute respect. The weaponization. You do not let the narcissist drive the car 24/7. That leads to toxic, delusional ruin. You let the narcissist out specifically when you need to command a room, pitch a massive idea, or demand your worth. When you walk into a boardroom to ask for a massive raise, your humble persona wants to apologize and list reasons why you might deserve it. You lock that persona away. You unchain the sovereign shadow. You walk in, take up physical space, drop your vocal tonality, and look the CEO dead in the eye. You project an aura of absolute, unyielding certainty. You demand the raise not as a favor, but as a tax they must pay for the privilege of retaining your brilliance. You use the arrogance to shatter their frame, and then you put the monster back on the leash and deliver the actual work with quiet professionalism. 3. The repressed psychopath, the cold executioner shadow. If your hate audit revealed that you despise people who are cold, heartless, ruthless, or unfeeling, your shadow carries psychopathic traits. Your conscious persona is highly empathetic, emotionally porous, and easily overwhelmed by the feelings of others. Your empathy is a chain around your neck, slowly strangling your future. Your shadow, however, feels absolutely nothing. It is a machine of pure, cold, calculated logic. The repressed psychopathic shadow views emotions as irrelevant data points. It does not feel guilt. It does not feel fear. It only calculates the most efficient route from point A to point B, regardless of who gets hurt in the process. The weaponization. Full psychopathy is a disorder. Managed tactical psychopathy is a superpower. You unchain the cold executioner when your empathy threatens to destroy your empire. When you have to cut a toxic friend out of your life, your empathetic persona will agonize for weeks, write a 5-page explanatory text message, and leave the door open for manipulation. You stop. You invoke the executioner. You block the number. You delete the contact. You feel the surge of guilt, and you clinically observe it without reacting to it. You execute the emotional amputation with the cold, sterile precision of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. No apologies, no explanations, total, absolute severance. You use the coldness to protect the fortress of your mind. Practice Application 2. The Dialogue in the Dark. To weaponize these traits, you must establish a direct line of communication with the monster. You cannot control what you refuse to speak to. Tonight, you will sit in a dark room. No phone, no music, total silence. Close your eyes and visualize a physical door in your mind. Open the door and walk down the stairs. Visualize the exact physical manifestation of your shadow. What does the Machiavellian, the narcissist, or the executioner inside you look like? Is it a snarling wolf? Is it a cold, calculating king? Is it a shadowy demon? Look it in the eyes and speak to it internally. Say, "I see you. I know I locked you away because I was afraid of you, but I am no longer a child, and I am no longer afraid. I need your aggression. I need your strategy. I need your absolute refusal to yield. You work for me now. We are going to take what is ours." Feel the rush of adrenaline. Feel the sudden spike in your heart rate. That is the biological reality of the repressed energy returning to your nervous system. That is the feeling of becoming whole. You are no longer a domesticated prey animal. You have invited the predator back into your house. This concludes the unmasking. We have identified the monster. We have mapped the basement. But recognizing the shadow is only the first step. If you let it off the leash without discipline, it will burn your life to the ground. In Part 2, we will master the alchemy of spite. You will learn how to take the toxic, destructive energy of your anger and refine it into cold, calculated momentum. We will construct the iron boundary, teaching you how to assert this new, dangerous presence in the real world without destroying your reputation. And finally, we will execute the integration protocol, forging the ultimate sovereign mind. Prepare yourself. The real work is about to begin. Chapter 4. The Alchemy of Spite. Transmuting Toxic Resentment. Welcome back to the dark. In Part 1, we unlocked the basement. We dismantled the catastrophic lie of the nice guy, exposed the metabolic drain of your repression, and mapped the specific architecture of your inner monster, the Machiavellian, the narcissist, and the executioner. You have looked the predator in the eyes. But a predator is useless if it has no fuel. A monster cannot hunt if it is not hungry. To power the shadow, we must utilize an energy source that modern society and traditional self-help gurus have desperately told you to eradicate: anger, envy, and spite. Since you were a child, you were told that anger is a poison. You were told that holding on to resentment is like drinking venom and expecting the other person to die. You have been force-fed the doctrine of unconditional forgiveness. You are told to let it go, to take the high road, and to wish your enemies well. This is the philosophy of the prey. It is a doctrine engineered to keep you docile. In the realm of dark psychology and absolute sovereignty, we do not let it go. We do not forgive our enemies. We use them. Welcome to the alchemy of spite. The biological reality of resentment. Let us look at the cold biology of the situation. Why do humans feel resentment? Why do we feel spite? Evolution does not create useless emotions. When you feel a burning, toxic resentment towards someone who has slighted you, betrayed you, or outpaced you, your brain is releasing a specific cocktail of norepinephrine, cortisol, and dopamine. Your nervous system is literally preparing your body for physical and social combat. It is signaling a survival threat to your status. When you follow the advice of polite society and try to forgive and forget before you have actually achieved victory, you are suppressing a massive biological energy source. You push that resentment down into the basement with the shadow, and in the dark, that unexpressed energy turns inward. It metastasizes. It becomes chronic anxiety. It becomes depression. It becomes physical illness. The sovereign does not suppress this energy. The sovereign operates like an alchemist. In ancient times, alchemy was the theoretical attempt to transmute base, worthless metals like lead into pure gold. Psychological alchemy is the process of taking the toxic, heavy, destructive emotion of spite, the lead, and running it through the furnace of your discipline until it becomes pure, high-octane momentum, the gold. Weaponizing the dark energy. Think of the most successful, terrifyingly driven people in human history, the legendary CEOs, the elite athletes, the empire builders. If you look closely at their origin stories, their initial drive did not come from a desire to make the world a better place. Their drive came from a deep, burning, unquenchable desire to prove someone wrong. They were told they were too small, too stupid, or too poor. They were rejected, they were laughed at, and instead of forgiving the people who laughed at them, they harnessed that humiliation. They took that spite, locked it in a mental vault, and used it as the nuclear fuel for their 100-hour work weeks. I am going to build an empire so massive that the people who doubted me will have to watch my success every single time they turn on a screen or look out a window. I am going to make their rejection the greatest mistake of their pathetic lives. This is the internal monologue of the integrated shadow. It is dark, it is petty, it is completely uncivilized, and it is arguably the most powerful motivational force in the human nervous system. When you try to motivate yourself with positive affirmations, your brain quickly gets bored. The dopamine wears off. But when you motivate yourself with spite, when you imagine the look of absolute devastation on the face of the enemy who doubted you when you finally win, your amygdala fires, your heart rate spikes, you tap into a primal, predatory energy that simply does not tire. Practice Application 3, the Fuel Matrix. It is time to organize your resentment. You cannot let spite bleed out in random outbursts of anger or social media arguments. Spite must be cold, quiet, and directed entirely into your daily systems. You will create the fuel matrix. Take a private, secure journal. At the top of the page, write the ledger of debts. Identify the target. Write down the name of every person who has ever disrespected you, betrayed you, overlooked you for a promotion, or made you feel inferior. Write down the toxic ex, the arrogant boss, the dismissive family member. The specific offense. Next to their name, write exactly what they did and exactly how they made you feel. Do not soften the language. If they made you feel like garbage, write it down. The ultimate vengeance. This is the alchemical pivot. Next to the offense, write down the specific, massive, undeniable achievement you are going to acquire that will completely invalidate their existence. Example: David mocked my business idea in front of the team. I am going to build this company to a $10 million valuation, buy his firm, and personally fire him. Do not ever speak of this list to anyone. This is the private feeding ground for your monster. Tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and your weak, civilized persona wants to hit the snooze button and go back to sleep, you open the mental vault. You look at the ledger of debts. You visualize David's mocking smile. You feel the spike of hot, toxic anger in your chest. And then you close the vault, get out of bed, and use that anger to fuel your workout and your deep work block. You have successfully transmuted the poison into power.
Chapter 5: The Iron Boundary: Projecting Threat Without Violence. We have mapped the monster. We have secured its fuel supply. Now we must let it guard the gates. One of the defining characteristics of the repressed nice guy or the people pleaser is a complete and total lack of boundaries. People pleasers believe they have boundaries, but what they actually have are preferences. A preference is a request. I would really prefer it if you didn't speak to me that way. When the other person ignores the preference and speaks to them poorly anyway, the people pleaser sighs, gets secretly resentful, and tolerates the behavior. A boundary is not a request. A boundary is a law of physics. A boundary states, if you speak to me that way, I will execute a consequence that will make you deeply regret your decision. Here is the dark, uncomfortable truth about human psychology. A boundary is entirely meaningless if it is not backed by the implicit threat of violence or severe consequence. In civilized society, we do not use physical violence, but the biological dynamic remains identical. If a narcissist, a toxic boss, or a manipulative partner realizes that you are fundamentally incapable of executing a ruthless consequence, they will never respect your boundaries. They will test the fence, find out it isn't electrified, and trample right over you. Your civilized persona is physically incapable of enforcing a boundary because the persona is terrified of conflict. The persona wants everyone to be happy. Enforcing the boundary is the job of the shadow. The aura of the predator. When you integrate the shadow, you do not become a raging lunatic who screams at everyone who crosses you. That is a lack of emotional control, which is the ultimate sign of weakness. The integrated sovereign enforces boundaries through the aura of the predator. When you fully accept that you possess the capacity for ruthlessness, your entire physical and energetic presence changes. You stop slouching. Your eye contact becomes piercing and unblinking. Your vocal tonality drops. You no longer have to yell to be heard. You project a quiet, dense, heavy energy that subconsciously signals to the primate brains of everyone in the room. This person is dangerous. If I push them, I will lose. Let us look at how the integrated shadow handles a boundary violation in real time. Imagine a manipulative colleague constantly forgets to include you on important emails, trying to subtly cut you out of a project. The repressed response, the prey. You send a passive-aggressive email. Hey, just noticed I wasn't copied on this. Please remember me next time. Thanks. You put a smiley face at the end to ensure they don't get mad at you. They ignore it and do it again. The integrated response, the predator. You do not send an email. You walk directly to their desk. You do not smile. You stand over them, invading their physical space just enough to trigger a mild biological pressure. You look them dead in the eye and you drop your voice to a cold, resonant whisper. I noticed you excluded me from the client correspondence again. If you attempt to isolate me from my own project one more time, I will immediately escalate this to the executive board with a full audit of your recent communications, and I will have you removed from the account entirely. Do we understand each other? And then you hold the silence. You do not blink. You let the absolute terror of your coldness wash over them. Notice the mechanics. You did not yell, you did not use profanity, but you unchained the cold executioner, the psychopathic trait of your shadow. You delivered a massive, disproportionate, and utterly ruthless consequence. You proved that you are completely willing to destroy their standing in the company without a single shred of guilt. They will never forget to email you again. Practice Application 4, the Consequence Protocol. To construct the iron boundary, you must stop issuing warnings and start executing consequences. Define the perimeter. Write down 3 behaviors you are currently tolerating in your life that are draining your energy or disrespecting your status. A friend who is constantly late, a client who calls you on weekends, a partner who uses guilt trips. Determine the lethal consequence. For each behavior, design a consequence that is cold, absolute, and non-negotiable. If the client calls on Sunday, I will not answer, and I will bill them a $500 penalty for out-of-hours correspondence on Monday. If the friend is more than 15 minutes late without notice, I will leave the venue, and I will not reschedule with them for a month. The silent execution. The most important part of the iron boundary is that you do not debate it. When the perimeter is breached, you do not explain yourself. You do not argue. You simply drop the guillotine. When you execute a consequence with cold, silent precision, you teach the world that your word is law. You teach them that the monster is awake and it is guarding the gates.
Chapter 6. The Ruthless Scholar. Machiavellian Social Architecture. Once your boundaries are secure, you can begin to use the shadow offensively. We must move from defense to conquest. To conquer your environment, whether it is climbing the corporate ladder, dominating your industry, or building a formidable social network, you must view human interaction through the eyes of the Machiavellian shadow. The civilized persona views the world through a lens of morality. It asks, what is fair? What is right? What do I deserve? The Machiavellian shadow views the world through the lens of leverage. It asks, what is the power dynamic? Who holds the resources? How can I manipulate the incentives to force them to give me what I want? The shadow understands that the concept of fairness is a bedtime story invented by the weak to convince the strong not to crush them. In the real world, you do not get what is fair, you get what you have the leverage to negotiate. The death of transparency. The first casualty of the integrated shadow is the illusion of total transparency. The nice guy believes that honesty is always the best policy. He overshares his intentions. He tells his boss exactly what he is thinking. He shows all his cards to his competitors, believing that if he is authentic, the universe will reward him. The ruthless scholar understands that total transparency is a tactical suicide. In the game of power, information is the ultimate currency. If you give away your information for free, you bankrupt your own leverage. You must learn the dark art of strategic ambiguity. When you operate with the shadow, you speak less. You reveal your plans only when the execution is already guaranteed. You become a master of observing others while remaining an impenetrable fortress yourself. When a rival in your office asks what you are working on, the persona wants to brag and list your achievements. The shadow steps in, offers a polite, dead-eyed smile, and says, "Just managing the usual baseline tasks. How is your project going?" You extract their data while revealing absolutely none of your own. You let them talk. You let their ego force them to brag, revealing their strategies, their weaknesses, and their alliances.
You catalog this data in your mental vault. You are mapping the battlefield while remaining invisible. The law of asymmetric warfare. The Machiavellian shadow does not fight fair. If you find yourself in a fair fight, your strategy has failed. When you encounter an obstacle or an enemy, you do not charge at them head-on. A frontal assault triggers their defenses and results in a bloody, exhausting war of attrition. You must use asymmetric warfare. You attack the foundation of their power where they are blind. If a dominant, aggressive competitor is trying to steal your market share, you do not try to out-yell them. You deploy the shadow. You study their supply chain. You identify the single vendor or key employee they rely on the most. You quietly, ruthlessly acquire that vendor, or you offer that key employee an irresistible counteroffer. You pull the linchpin out of their empire in the dead of night. When their structure collapses, they will not even know it was you who destroyed them. You will offer them your deepest sympathies while standing on the ashes of their business. This is the cold, calculated execution of the apex predator. You do not conquer through rage, you conquer through architecture. You build a maze and you let your enemies trap themselves. Practice Application 5. The Leverage Audit. Before you enter any room, any negotiation, or any significant interaction, you must silence the persona and awaken the scholar. Ask yourself 3 clinical questions. What is their core psychological vulnerability? Are they driven by ego, by fear of poverty, or by a desperate need for validation? What do I possess that they desperately need? Is it my skill, my network, my silence, or my approval? How can I restrict access to what they need until they surrender what I want? When you map every human interaction as an exchange of leverage, the world ceases to be a confusing emotional minefield. It becomes a perfectly logical chessboard, and you are no longer a pawn.
Chapter 7. The Integration Protocol. Becoming the Sovereign Apex. We have mapped the monster. We have fueled it with the alchemy of spite. We have stationed it at the iron boundary. We have unchained its Machiavellian intellect to manipulate the board. Now we reach the final, most dangerous stage of psychological surgery. We must execute the integration protocol. If you unleash the shadow without control, you will not become a sovereign. You will become a psychopath. You will destroy your relationships, burn your reputation, and end up isolated or imprisoned by your own darkness. A feral monster is a liability. True world-bending power requires integration. Integration is the absolute, seamless fusion of your civilized persona and your primal shadow. It is the synthesis of light and dark. The velvet glove and the iron fist. The fully integrated sovereign moves through the world with a terrifying, beautiful duality. They possess the velvet glove. They are exceptionally polite. They are articulate. They dress impeccably. They listen deeply, project intense warmth, and make the people around them feel profoundly valued and safe. They master the rules of civilized society and play the game flawlessly. But beneath that velvet glove is an iron fist. The people who interact with the sovereign subconsciously sense it. They look into the sovereign's eyes, and behind the warm smile, they see the flicker of the predator. They sense the absolute, undeniable capacity for calculated, surgical violence if the boundary is breached. This duality is the ultimate source of human charisma. We are irresistibly drawn to dangerous things that are under absolute, voluntary control.
A tamed wolf is infinitely more captivating than a domestic golden retriever. When you integrate the shadow, you no longer have to pretend to be a good person. A harmless person is not a good person. They are just incapable of doing damage. A truly good person is a deeply dangerous, highly capable, incredibly lethal monster who voluntarily chooses to keep their sword sheathed because they have mastered their own soul. The death of the victim. When the integration protocol is complete, a profound psychological death occurs. The victim inside you dies forever. You can no longer complain that the world is unfair. You can no longer whine about toxic bosses, manipulative partners, or bad luck. Because the integrated mind knows that it possesses the teeth, the claws, and the intellect to tear apart any obstacle in its path. If you are trapped in a bad situation, the integrated shadow does not ask for pity. It whispers, "We allowed this. We have the leverage to break out. Calculate the exit and let's execute." You become an impenetrable fortress. You no longer fear the darkness of the world, because you have realized that the darkest, most terrifying thing in the valley is you.
Conclusion. The throne in the dark. You have reached the bottom of the descent. You have opened the iron door. You have met the monster. We began this journey by stripping away the fragile, comforting delusion of your civilized morality. We exposed the metabolic drain of your repression and the pathetic, subordinate reality of the nice guy penalty. You learned the brutal mechanics of psychological projection, discovering that the traits you hate most in others are the exact weapons you have buried in yourself. You mapped your unique dark triad, identifying the Machiavellian strategist, the narcissistic sovereign, and the cold executioner sleeping in your subconscious. You mastered the alchemy of spite, learning to take the toxic venom of rejection and resentment and transmute it into cold, unstoppable, high-octane fuel for your empire. You built the iron boundary, realizing that a boundary without the implicit threat of severe consequence is merely a suggestion for the weak. You learned to navigate the world as a ruthless scholar, abandoning the suicidal illusion of transparency and mastering the dark art of asymmetric leverage. And finally, you executed the integration protocol. You learned to wear the velvet glove over the iron fist, becoming the ultimate charismatic paradox, a lethal, highly capable predator acting under the strict, voluntary control of a sovereign will. There is an ancient, unyielding truth to the human condition. You cannot conquer the demons outside of you until you have conquered and commanded the demons inside of you. The world is a brutal, unforgiving hierarchy. It does not reward the meek. It does not reward the harmless. It rewards leverage. It rewards capability. It rewards those who possess the profound, terrifying courage to look into the abyss of their own soul, grab the monster by the throat, and put it on a leash. The next time you are disrespected, the next time you feel the sting of rejection, the next time your civilized ego begs you to shrink, to apologize, and to swallow your anger to keep the peace, freeze. Anchor your feet to the earth. Do not panic. Do not shrink. Take a breath. Unlock the basement. Let the shadow step forward into the light and show the world exactly what you are truly capable of. The throne belongs to the monster who learns to rule. Now go and claim your empire.
Thank you for descending into the dark with quick audiobooks. If this masterclass has shattered your illusions, awakened your shadow, and given you the keys to your own psychological sovereignty, ensure you subscribe, like, and return for more uncompromising, relentless deep dives into psychology, power, and the pursuit of absolute freedom. Until next time, integrate the shadow, stay sovereign, and stay dangerous.